Hello everyone, I'm Camille and welcome in this tutorial about our hatching shader, basically another one in this series. I've been asked a few times of how to mix the hatching shading with the colors in your scene and the textures. And it is actually relatively easy, but there's also a few little gotchas which is good to keep in mind and a few little tricks which I can show you down the road. So we're not gonna do anything super fancy in this tutorial, but I will show you how you can easily mix colors with your hatching shader. All right. So what I loaded here, it's a different model of Temple because I just want to have some nicer looking textures and nicer colors and etc. So I just loaded a model. I will show you how does it look with the textures. It looks like that. Unfortunately, you are not going to have access to it. It's a model which we use in the game. For us, it's a commercial model. We use it in our own product, so we can't really provide it to you, unfortunately. But you still can use the old model, like from the files, or basically you can use your own models. And I've seen people using their own scenes with hatching shaders and etc. It looks amazing. So just keep it up, and I just gonna build our example on this temple. Okay, so we have it here, right? It's a standard hatching shader, nothing changed. And let's just get back to our post-process volume, right? This is where all our magic happens. These are our post-processing shaders, right? We give them some priority, we have them in order, and we know how they execute it, and etc. So the last one in execution is the paper video. Is that one which add this like the grain of a paper, this grayish look, and it's super actually important. Like if we turn it off, we do have hatching with lines, the squiggly lines, right? As I call it. So we can do our mixing with colors in our paper video, okay? So let's turn it on. And maybe instead of calling it a paper video, let's call it a little bit different. Let's call it maybe a final mix. Right? It's not really good name, but let's call it, where's the paper video? Oh, here you go, it's here. Mix color paper. Right, doesn't really matter. But we knew that it's mixing something, right? Let's open it. And you remember here we got this super simple network. So we got the paper texture, right? Which is multiplied by 0.5, just make it a little bit darker and just, you know, cranking up the contrast slightly bit. And then we mix it with previous output from our previous post-process material, which was hatching video, right? We grab it there. We grab it there. Oh, oopsie, not this one. Sorry, we grab it here, right? We use it as an alpha, so what is white, it's gonna have a black color and the paper will go here. Now, let's, instead of using paper, just for now, let's use a scene color. Cool? And you remember, there's no really easy way now for us to access a scene color. I mean, sorry, by scene color, I mean a scene unaffected by any post-process materials. That's what I meant. I just want have a render without any post-process materials, and we can do it just out of the box here. All right? We can access just a scene color. Let me show you how does it look. If let's say we choose a base color for lighting, we connect it here, and the base color is just the color. It's like a diffuse, but without any lighting information in it. And it's cool. We will use this one to mix with our hatching lines. And we don't need the lighting in our case because we use hatching textures to be like more dense, whereas the shadows and etc. So we have that information. We have it from our hatching lines, so we don't want anything else. So we're gonna use this one. This is pretty cool. But I just want to show you, some of you had questions how to mix it with like shadows from lighting as well. So some people want to have shadows, They want to have that lighting, and that's a really cool trick. Actually, we did that before. When you go to a PP hatching video shader, this is our, hatching shader which we used to generate the lines, right? You remember we calculate the lighting pass at some point. It was actually happening here. We got the base color as stored in the gbuffer, and we divided by something. And what was that? That actually, it's a trick to get the scene unaffected by any, to get the render unaffected by any post-process material. So we just wrote this little piece of a code here, and we just needed to plug a scene called scene texture to it. Doesn't matter, could be war normal, doesn't matter. It was just to generate extra code up front. Just watch the first video about hatching shader if you just come here by accident or something. But never mind. What we need to do, we need to grab those two nodes from PP hatching video, right? It's the custom node, original scene color, that's how we call it. Control C to copy it, bring it here, and let's just connect it for a second to our emissive color. Let's save it. And you can see at the preview is like, oh yeah, this is a whole scene with the shadows. And some people want to mix hatching with the shadows, which I don't think is, it depends on your style, but for this particular case, it doesn't look good. I don't like that look in my case. So we're not gonna mix it. But if we grab a base color, right, which we had before, we connect it to lerp, and we connect it to emissive, it's not gonna work, and I will show you why. Let's click continue. And some of you guys had a little bit trouble on this step. What's happening here, as you can see, there's actually getting error which says there's an issue with float 4 and mixing with the float 3. So outputs from scene textures from these nodes are always float 4. That means they come in with the 4 channels. And as I like to do, I like to get rid of the alpha channel, the 4th channel, and I recommend they do it here as well. So just have it clean. We just copy the mask, and this is a component mask node. You just plug it here, and we click save. Now, cool. Let's have a look. Well, that starts looking pretty interesting, right? Let's just deselect it. Let's have a look. So this is the easiest way to mix your hatching lines with colors. Now, there's a few things which we need to tweak. We're gonna leave it as it is, right? So this is our mixed color paper texture. I like to switch the base color as it's stored in the gbuffer. So it's literally just base color. But it shouldn't be see any difference here. Now you can see that it's okay, but those places where there is no hatching by itself, it looks a little bit dull. It looked great when there was no textures, right? Because it was less of a contrast. But currently when the colors pops in, something is missing. And now there's few ways to solve it. You can have some hatching marks on your textures in your objects. Maybe you have lots of actually like a watercolor look, and you have lots of whites coming through, and etc. And maybe in future videos I will talk about watercolors and how to break it down, how to design watercolor look. But for now, let's focus on a hatching shade. How we can make it look better. There's one actually pretty cool trick. We'll try to fill all these empty spaces with a little bit of hatching, right? Just stay with me. We'll do it. How to approach that? It's actually relatively simple. We don't want to overdo it right now because we already have so many elements everywhere. Very complicated. We just want to make it better in a little cost as much as we can, right? All right, let's get back to our PP hatching video. Actually, before we go, let me just check one thing. So if I select our post-process volumes, I just want to be sure that we have all of our materials on. That's good, they're all on. We go to hatching video. So this is our shader which creates hatching. And now I would like to have the most sparse hatching visible much earlier. And you know we control it with the curve. In the case, it's a cur low HC. Right, let's have a look where it is. It's actually here. Now, when I was doing some tests, I created a version dev. Let's just remove it. Yeah, I can force delete it. And let's duplicate a curve. Let's duplicate it and let's just create a version HC, but we'll just call it extra. Something like that, right? Let's go to our atlas. This is really important. We need to add it to our atlas so we can access it. Let's save it. Cool. And now let's get back to our shader. And I close the shader. Of course I did close the shader. PB hatching video. That's the shader. And let's just change here to our new curve, right? So nothing changed because the curve is almost the same. But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna open the curve now. And if you remember from previous videos, so that's the brightest parts of the image, and this is the darkest part of the image, and we wanna have more of the hatching coming in earlier. So what we're gonna do, we'll just grab our curve and we're just gonna move it a little bit. And now you can see, I'm just gonna put the curve back on the monitor, and now you can see our picture looks much better. We start getting a bit more definition by getting some hatching on our model, which is good, right? That looks fantastic. Great. Of course, there's a new problem being introduced, that this low res hatching is basically repeating all over the place, right? And it's just, it looks great on a model, but it doesn't really look good on a like big empty spaces, right? So it depends on the situation. It could work for you. But now what we try to do, we'll try to break it down, those big spaces, and we'll try to maybe add another texture, okay? But don't worry, we're not gonna add another curve to control it and etc. We'll try to do a trick here, okay? Because the other way could be to do it is to create another curve mask, right? And add another layer and control it and etc. But that's I think a little bit that's overcomplicating the whole setup. Let's just try to make it much simpler. And what we'll start with is, let's just move this whole thing up. Let's copy it here. So we're gonna use Perlin noise texture to control transition between two different very sparse hatching textures, all right? So let's bring that Perlin. Now remember we had a Perlin noise. Let's choose the rough medium, yes. And let's connect it. Let's connect it to emissive. Yeah. Let's save it. And let's have a look. How does it look? Yeah, you can see that it looks good. It's been applied. So, sometimes you can use it to apply, to create some sort of variations in your textures all over the scene, some dirt and etc. Obviously, this one is like too small. It's too dense. We need to scale it up. And we're gonna go with like quite big values. Let's go 1000 to 1000. This is the third thing. And second, I want a black and white. So I'm gonna component mask. I'm gonna do a component mask. Great. And I'm just gonna use, let's say, Z channel, because why not? And connect this one to emissive color. And let's have a look. Yeah, that looks better. Now you can see more clearly when you have this type of a texture applied on your model. It's adding another level of, so if you have a static models, you can apply this world-based noise on it, and it's can actually helps your models to blend much nicely to your environment, and can add a little bit of a dirt. But for our purpose, we need a bigger scale. We need to scale it much more. let's get back to it. Let's do 2000 by 2000. All right, let's have a look. Yes, this is, we can start working with that. Now what we need to do, we definitely need to have a much harder transition. We don't want to have a smooth transition between one hatching texture and another. We definitely want to have like black parts and white parts, black parts and the white parts, and not this much of a grayish look. So let's use constant bias node to get the greater values, right? So we get like values between minus 0.5 to 0.5, and then we'll multiply it by 2. So we get values from minus 1 to 1, okay? So the reason why we does that. The reason why we does that is we want to get black colors more often, and we want to get white more often. And currently we're getting output from our texture, we're getting from 0 to 1. And we want to often just get like black, like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. We want to get more contrasty texture. But the thing is, if you just apply contrast to it, yes, you're gonna get, but it still isn't gonna be good. I really recommend to use a constant bias in this case. So we're currently having here of our textural values from 0 to 1. And now what are we gonna do? We're gonna do constant bias scale. First, what we're gonna do, we're gonna subtract minus 0.5. So if something was 0, was black, now it's gonna be minus 0.5. It's okay. I know we do not have minus 0.5 color, but remember we're using it as a mask, and later we're gonna clamp it, so don't worry about that. And we're gonna multiply it by 2. So then minus 0.5, it will become minus 1, and things which was 0.5, it will become 1. So now we have a texture here outputted after constant bias from minus 1 to 1, which is cool. That's really cool. Now let's saturate it. And saturate, it's gonna do a clump. It's basically gonna just give us value from 0 to 1. So now you can see what I did, right? Let's connect it to emissive color. So now some black areas here are actually black. And if we go to our hatching, yeah, we can, you can play with the constant bias. You can get much more black areas if you would like. That's okay. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna apply cheap contrast, because cheap contrast will definitely help. Yeah, let's do that. So we have a mask here, constant bias. Let's do saturate. Let's do cheap contrast. And let's connect it to emissive. Right. So by default, contrast is 0. So that doesn't change anything. Let's add constant. And let's add, let's say 1. Let's see what's going to happen. Now we're getting really cool transitions between black and white. But I would like more of a contrast, I think. Let's have a look at 2. And about even more. Yeah, I think this is good, because we want to have a hard edge, more or less, between one texture and another, and you will see why in a minute. Now let's get back here. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So now what we will do, we'll use that texture, that mask texture, however you call it, to basically switch between two very low sparse hatching textures, right? So you're gonna have a bit of variety there. We can try to increase a bit of that white color. Sorry, decrease that white color. And I think how we can do it, we can a constant bias. If we just do minus 0.6, whoopsie, what did I did here? I'll go back here. 0.6, let's see. They're gonna give us more of a black. Ooh, this is super black. 0.1. Yeah. Okay, I think this is quite even. Other way, I think. Other way. I think it should be 45. Am I correct? Yeah. Yeah, that's more even. So we have like a even distribution between a black and white. Great. So we have that mask. That looks pretty cool. Let's leave it there. We can even disconnect it for a second. And let's bring another hatching texture here. I think we have one which is pretty sparse. Let's have a look. Oh, I think the 03, it's okay. It's quite sparse and we haven't used it before. So another important thing is like try to use one which you haven't used before, so that will make sense. So we have those two nice textures. And let's do linear interpolate between them. Linear interpolate. So we're gonna blend between them. As you can imagine, we'll use our mask which we just generated. Let's plug it into a saturate and let's give a try. Yeah, let's give a try and connect it straight away there. Let's save it. I mean, the preview doesn't really give us like good preview, but if you look at the preview, you can see there are some areas, patches of different direction and some patches with different direction, different texture, right? Okay, so now as you can see, we got some lines, right, on our floor, for example, but sometimes we have a change in the direction or sparseness, and now it's up to you. You can introduce more textures. You can have like a few layers up there if you would like to. It's a little bit up to you. How would you like to approach that? And also when we have the ground, I mean, this is very boring ground, it's very flat, but if you have some elements on it, it actually looks much better. If you have more like decorations and etc., that will help. Another thing that will help, it will be adding a paper, bringing our paper texture to that. And this is pretty simple to bring a paper. Let's get back to our mixed color paper. And we need to work on this side here. Now, let's disconnect the color for a second. So this is our color. Let's remove this one. And we're gonna use node overlay. And blend overlay works like blend overlay layer in a Photoshop, right? You basically use overlay to put on top of something. So let's use as our base, let's use our paper. And as a blend, let's use our base color and let's connect that to our lerp and we'll blend between the black color. Let's save it and let's have a look. And yeah, now we got this the paper texture under it. You can't really see it that much, but there is a difference. There is a difference in it. It's very subtle, but if you look at textures, you will see a bit of that paper grain there, which adds a lot. And obviously, we can also control our curve now here, as you remember, and we can just adjust that value to maybe have less or more. Now you can see that paper texture there. We can also change the value to be maybe, yeah, we can also adjust, yes, that top part, right? How intense it is. Like the curve where it starts, one thing. Also, we can also adjust the value here. We can add another stop if we would like to. We can choose this one black. So let's click this one, choose a color. Let's do black. And we can just give it a try and see how we can get like a little bit, you know, more subtle effect, you see? So by adjusting this curve, you can control this no man's area, or however you will call it, an area where basically there's no really a hatching, but you know, it should be something there, so it wouldn't be too boring. Yeah, so feel free, you know, adjust it and control it as you like. Yeah, hopefully you find this video helpful. Thank you so much for listening, and I can't wait to see your projects with this hatching color mix. Thank you.